Yo, 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 what is going on, my beautiful brothers and sisters, fellow radiators of love? My name is Jamal Pope, aka J Phoenix, and we're going to be talking about this new moon in Scorpio, which it's going to happen tomorrow. The moon is currently in Scorpio. We're going to be talking about this energy and just kind of go over the next couple of days, of course. Of course, I've been making these moon transit videos just as these little tidbits to help kind of guide you and get you through your week, or at least just provide my insight, and then you do what you do and stuff. It's interesting too when it comes to astrology. It's like I've gone through my different waves with it, my different cycles, and I felt like anytime that anyone gets into astrology, and I'll probably make like a longer video on this in general. So you kind of go through these cycles. You're interested in it, you become fascinated, then you kind of obsess over it, and then you kind of hit this weird wall where you become a little fatalistic, and then you're like, the obsession becomes kind of negative. And if you're like me, you have to kind of take a step back from it for a little bit, and then you kind of develop a healthier relationship. You still realize that you have agency, you still realize that we still have our free will, and that yes, the planets and the stars are going to do what they're going to do in their dance in the cosmos. And yes, there are influences and different proclivities that we have, that everyone has. But just because a negative transit happens doesn't mean that the world's going to shit. You know what I'm saying? So it's like humans, we've made it through a lot of different things. We'll continue to make it through a lot of different things: good, bad, the ugly, the beautiful. And that's the beautiful thing about astrology, is that it can help us to see the patterns and, like I said, the propensities and the energies and the elements of what can come. But ultimately, we still have our agency. I came across a post on Reddit that was essentially talking about this. And this individual, they were, you could tell that they were like kind of developing like this OCD about it. And every single transit that they perceived as negative, they were freaking out and becoming quite fatalistic. These are the moments where you kind of have to just take a step back, put your feet in the grass, chill out, and realize that even if there's a so-called negative transit, doesn't mean that you can't do anything with it and that some positivity can't happen out of it. The astrology is crazy right now, and it's only going to get crazier over the next 5 years, 10 years. It's only going to get crazier, but that doesn't mean that it's all bad, it's all negative, and the world's going to shit, even though it feels like it seems like that. We are being taught to believe that it is, but humans, we're a very resilient bunch, and we'll make it through anything. So we've had made it through a lot already. We've already done a lot to each other. We can make it through these moments as well. So this moon is Scorpio. Sorry, I'm just checking out here to make sure that I let my cat outside. We let him outside on our porch, and I just want to make sure that he's not sitting at the door waiting to come in. So I'm gonna have to step away briefly at some point during this. But I trust that you guys are having a wonderful day. I had my birthday was yesterday, so that was awesome. I mean, I didn't really do too much. Hung out with family, went to breakfast, and then went to the aquarium with my wife, Georgia Aquarium, which is freaking awesome. And saw some new things there that I hadn't seen before. Been to the aquarium a few times before. It's one of those things where I kind of morally feel a little odd about, because I feel like, you know, should we really be keeping these animals in captivity like this? But I know the majority of the animals there are rescues and stuff, and they do a good job. But there's some cool stuff that you see there, and I don't know. Sometimes we have to just take a step back and do things like that. They may seem kind of surface level. They may seem kind of almost even childish. Let's go to the aquarium, but I don't know. I represent water with all that Scorpio energy and Pisces energy, so it's like, that's kind of like right in my wheelhouse. But it was cool. My solar return was actually on Sunday, and then of course my birthday was yesterday. But it's interesting that this new moon happened almost right on my birthday, like pretty close to it, not quite exact, but about 3 or 4 degrees off from it. Anyways, let's talk about this, right? Well, the moon's in Scorpio, right? Doesn't like to be here. I'd much rather feel exalted in Taurus. And in addition with, Venus here, in addition with Mercury that's going to be retrograde back into this Scorpio with this new moon, yeah, things are definitely feeling a little bit deep. Things are definitely feeling a bit psychological, a little bit darker elements, darker themes. It's getting colder outside, even though the high is like in the 70s. It's like 71 or 72. That's the high. We had that one day last week here in Georgia where we actually had some flurries, and then by the end of the week it got hot again. So there's some ebbs and flows. It kind of feels a little bipolar. I know that's sometimes I hesitate to use words like that because people are like, "Oh, you're gonna offend somebody using these words," but I'm like, that's just the weather has been that way. The weather's been bipolar. The astrology's been bipolar. It's just a lot of stuff that's going on right now, And these are these moments where we feel a little bit more iced out. We kind of feel like we want to like clamber up and like hunker down and not really go out and be in the world and stuff. And it's an interesting time, but you don't want to ice out those relationships in your life that are contributing net positive. I think that's really what it comes down to, because there's no relationship that we're going to have in our life that's not going to disappoint us at some point. I guess in the words of Bob Marley, you have to find those relationships that are worth suffering for. you know and Scorpio in many ways deals with this transmutation, this transformation, where we're molding or shedding, excuse me, these different layers, these different emotional layers. We're shedding these different layers to get to the core of something. And what comes after that? Sagittarius. This is the belief, right? The belief in ourselves, the belief in our community, the belief in the world. The belief in the future, that there is a future, that there is a possibility, that there is something more to come, that there is something after this. It's funny how Scorpio in many ways rules death, but there's four signs that come after it, you know? So, yes, we are all going through a shedding moment. It's like when a snake sheds its skin, it's very, very sensitive. So, we're all quite sensitive right now. It makes sense why people want to just kind of hunker down and stay in their homes and not really go out and do stuff. But we still need to be active in the world and go out as well. We can't just completely hunker down and completely be the recluse and the hermit and shut ourselves off. But it is obviously important to take those times to just kind of chill out, relax, take our me time, take our meditation time. So, this moon is Scorpio. It's not necessarily going to have the best time. It's going to meet up with Venus today, later, towards the evening. And these are two, like I said, two energies, two celestial bodies that don't really like to be in Scorpio. So at the very least, the interesting thing about this is that there could be a level of camaraderie that can come from this. A level of like, hey, we're both in situations where we're a bit more sensitive, we're a bit more emotional, and it's a little bit deep. This can allow for some great, deeper conversations that you can have with people, kind of getting to the root of things emotionally, psychologically, spiritually. This is one of those things where it's like, if we're all in the emotional trenches, so to speak, at least you have someone next to you. I hope you have someone next to you. I hope that you're not alone during this. And, depending upon how you've been traveling and how you've been, like, cosmically traveling throughout these last 6 months, and then, of course, with the eclipses that we had with Virgo and Pisces, respectively, hopefully you don't find yourself in a position going into the winter, going into this holiday season where you find yourself alone. You ostracize yourself from your family, your community, and so forth. And I know we all have different situations. I know that it's not always so black and white. There's a lot of gray area. There's a lot of gray matter, So I'm not going to just sit here and say to forgive everybody that's ever wronged you and stuff like that. You have to come into that on your own. But there's still this element of, there's still like, what are you willing to receive? Because Venus is about it's the reception energy. So what are you willing to receive from others right now? Are you willing to hear people out? Are you willing to kind of go to those deeper levels with people? Are you willing to reminisce? Are you willing to kind of peer a little bit more into those memories and see that where are some of the inconsistencies within these memories? It's a very intimate time, but there's also this fear of intimacy. Black Moon Lilith is in between all this energy, between the Moon and Venus and the Sun and Mercury. Black Moon Lilith is smack dab in the middle of all this. So and almost in many ways at the core and the heart of this, there's a fear of intimacy. There's a fear of vulnerability, and with Mars and Sagittarius that's moving fast, it's moving forward, we can try and cover up these insecurities with action. We can try and cover it up with acting on these beliefs, but hasn't been fully thought through. Remember, Mercury retrograded in this spot and going back into Scorpio, right? We'll see Mercury finally come forward, but it's going to be at the end of the month when Mercury finally stations direct. So we still have another 12 days or so before, before our minds kind of get back online, if you will. So let's go ahead and hop into the charts and stuff, so y'all can see. So this is where we are right now. Like I said, we have this moon here. Oh, let me shift this just a little bit. This moon right here at 9 degrees of Scorpio at the time of us making this. And as you can see, like I said, Black Moon Lilith right smack dab in the middle of this. You have the moon and Venus on one side. You have the sun and Mercury on the other side, right? And if I just move this forward just a day, we'll see, of course, that moon is going to conjunct this Venus. And then we will get to that new moon, which is going to be at 28 degrees of Scorpio. Right, so we're going to be getting this like late Wednesday, pretty much going into Thursday. So dreams will probably be off the chain. Not gonna lie, since this is going to be happening in the middle of the night, your dreams are probably going to be a little bit off the chain here. Especially with Mercury here. Mercury is the planet of communication, and being in Scorpio, this could be some interesting stuff as it's opposing Uranus at the same time too. But we have this new moon in Scorpio at 28 degrees. It's at towards these final few degrees, right? It's not going to go void of course because that moon will oppose Uranus before it goes into Sagittarius, and Mercury is here with it as well, right? So I always tell my, like, with Mercury, when it comes to water signs, it's like trying to talk underwater. So it's muddled. You can't hear everything. Interesting enough, sound in many ways there's an enhancement that kind of comes with it, but you can't really make out the words, if you will, if you ever try talking underwater, right? Now with Scorpio, not only can you not talk underwater, but it's like trying to talk underwater, and the water is like it's ice. There's ice floating in it. It's like you're trying to talk underwater, but you're in the Arctic or something. So not only can you not talk underwater, but that cold, icy water is going to enter into your lungs and might try and freeze you from the inside out. So it's going to hurt your throat, it's going to hurt your lungs. So that's the weird thing about this. I think the communication here has to be more subtle. It's not, you don't want to necessarily listen to the people right now that are making the big claims, having the big ideas, the big whatever. These are the things that it's probably not going to be super sustainable. Anyone making massive claims, big claims, making big promises as well. Be careful of, making massive, huge promises, because this Mercury is iced all the way out. Yes, it's with the sun, so it kind of helps with a little bit of the thawing here. So, I mean, at least we have that, but it's not going to have the sustainability aspect, especially with it opposing Uranus. You gotta think, too, we have the Venus not in a good spot, Moon not in a good spot, Uranus now not in a good spot. It's gonna make it tougher. Not impossible, but it definitely makes it a bit tough. This new moon is also, of course, going to be in trine with this Neptune and Saturn and this Jupiter. So we've had this like extended grand water trine over the past few days as the sun hit that 25th degree and made the trine over to Jupiter and Saturn. Now, of course, it's on its way to trining this Neptune exactly, and then it's going to oppose Uranus, right? So pretty much as the moon passes over the sun and goes into Sag, we'll see that moon come into that direct opposition. So this is adding another layer of pressure. My cat is ready to come inside. Come on. This is adding another layer of pressure, but this is all for our evolution, right? This is all for our evolution. And, don't be afraid of this. I think there's a level of fear obviously with this, so we have the Black Moon Lilith here. There is a level of fear where it comes to the vulnerability, being able to transform, being able to let go in many ways some of the ideas, some of the values, some of the things that have gotten us to this point, but will they be able to take us to the next level? I think that's the thing about that. It's like, I'm just going to use a very simple example. I know not all of you guys are into Pokemon like I am, but this is like, imagine you're evolving your Pokemon, right? Imagine you have, I'll just use Charmander, right? Because Charmander, Charmeleon, Charizard, they're very recognizable. Imagine you have a Charizard, but it has to move Ember. Sure, the packaging is, he's bigger, he's faster, he's technically stronger, his stats are better, but his move set is trash. I'm sorry, like you decided to not have your Charizard learn Flamethrower or Fire Spin. Fire Spin's technically not a good move, but you had him not learn better moves. You have him still stuck on Tackle, Ember. There's those moves that he used in its earlier stages, which were necessary to help it grow and evolve to get to the next level. But this is the difference between having a Charizard that has the move Ember, which is a 40 base power move, to having the move Flamethrower, which is a 90 base power move, or Fire Blast, which is over 100 base power. So that's the thing about this. It's like sometimes I think we can get so stuck, especially with the nostalgia, on moves that we have had in our arsenal, tools in our arsenal that have gotten us to where we are right now. And now we're having to relearn a new move. And whenever you're relearning a new move, the cool thing about evolution is that you're stronger, you're more conditioned. So it's not like you necessarily are starting from ground zero, but suddenly now you have this new tool which has a lot more firepower to it. No pun intended. But it has a lot more firepower to it. And now you're having to, in many ways, kind of relearn how to use that move. Sometimes it can be overwhelming. And I think that's a part of I think that's kind of the nice benefit of having all these retrograde planets is that I think we are all gaining new tools, or we're being given the opportunity to gain new tools, and these tools are strong, they're powerful. We have to relearn how to use these moves, otherwise it's like we'll fly back. It's like, say if I really don't know much about guns, but I know some guns are more powerful than others, and you can't just do a one-handed thing. You got to use both hands, otherwise you'll like flick back, like the recoil. So the recoil on these new moves, these new tools in our arsenal, they're higher, but the output is greater. So I think that's what we have to not get so stuck on. Yeah, maybe we mastered a certain move or a certain tool, but this is about like how can we take it to the next level, you know? And yes, we're going to have to adjust. It's like, the way that you drive two different kind of cars is different. The way that you drive a Ford Focus is going to be much different than the way that you drive a Lamborghini. There's a lot more horsepower underneath the hood, or I don't know if they keep it in the hood or they keep it in the back, but there's a lot more power to it. So you have to adjust the way that you drive. You have to adjust the way that you use this tool. You know, with all these retrograde planets, this is the universe literally giving us this great opportunity to test drive these things in the sandbox before we take it out into the real world, before we actually take it out on the road and we actually kind of move into that sphere. So we have Mercury retrograde, Jupiter, Uranus, Chiron, Neptune, Saturn. This is a major review period. And whenever you have so many planets retrograde, you notice that things kind of move a little bit slower. Things aren't moving as fast. And this is actually a blessing in disguise. Because like I said, we're getting all these new tools, this new arsenal, if you will, more powerful equipment, if you will. And this is giving us the opportunity to learn how to use those things, so the recoil doesn't come back and hit us in the head. You know what I'm saying? So, you know, it's definitely a very interesting time. We can look at some of the sheets and some of the scores. We can see that during this new moon, Jupiter is going to be the strongest at +4. The sun is at +1. The moon is at -1, so it's actually not bad. Even though the moon doesn't like to be here. It's not actually terrible. Even Venus at -2 isn't the worst in the world. Now, the confusion, of course, is going to come from the fact that Mercury is at -5 here, right? So, depending upon the narrative and the story that you tell yourself about this new moon and the energy that you can manifest and the new seeds that you're planting, that can cause you to kind of derail a bit. And then, of course, Saturn is here saying that, hey, it's going to be a little bit difficult. It's not necessarily going to be easy. That's at -5 as well. And it's over there in Neptune, over there with Neptune and Pisces, right? So, yes, it's not going to be easy. There's going to be some challenges that come through this, but this is how you get stronger. You know what I'm saying? You're going to take some hits. I think with all this energy in Scorpio, I think people are going to be trying to build up layers with this new moon, with the black moon Lilith there with Venus, and build up layers so they don't ever take a hit. So they never feel it. They don't want their HP to go down. I'm using a lot of video game terms, but they don't want to take a hit. They're afraid to take a hit. You're a lot stronger than you realize. You've taken some hits in your life, right? Physical, well, hopefully not physical. But you know what I mean, as far as like, we all, as you grow older, knees start giving out, back starts giving out, but we all have physical ailments that we've dealt with, right? So I'm not talking about like actual abuse, but we've taken hits in our life, physical as in health, emotional, mental as in health too, spiritual, psychological. We've all taken hits. You're a lot stronger than you give yourself credit for. But if you build up all of these layers, you're not actually going to, those layers aren't going to stay on forever. You're going to have to eventually shed those layers. And then what happens if you get hit in the mouth? You're going to react in a way to where you're going to want to retreat in the hole again. But life has a way of punching us in the mouth from time to time. And we have to build up that sort of spiritual immune system, if you will, so that when life punches us in the mouth, we don't stay on the ground for too long, or we get back up and we keep fighting. Like, I don't know if any of you guys ever watch like UFC or anything like that. But like, there are some matches that you'll watch where you are convinced that someone has lost a match. You are convinced they've been getting wailed on for like several rounds. And then they throw a haymaker and they knock out the other dude and life punched that dude in the mouth. But that's the thing. They were able to take the hits. They were able to weather the storm, and they were able to come out victorious. So in many ways, I feel like that's what this new moon is all about. It is showing us our strength. It is showing us how we have weathered the storm. And it is showing us that no matter how many freaking times life might punch us in the mouth, punch us in the gut, we had the capability of getting up and moving forward. If you're watching this video, you have survived 100% of your worst days, right? So that's amazing. You're far stronger and far more resilient than you give yourself credit for. And I think a lot of times we just forget about that. So, but like I said, we'll see this new moon here. And then as that moon comes into Sagittarius, we will see Mercury actually shift past and go behind the sun, if you will. So, and then, like I said, this moon it would have opposed Uranus. The sun will end up opposing Uranus like the next day, essentially. So like on Friday, we will see this sun oppose Uranus. We'll be waking up to that here on the East Coast, right? And by this time, Mercury is really kind of moving a little bit faster, going backwards, and it's getting ready to trine this Saturn and Jupiter and create that grand water trine, which is kind of extended, like I said. But like I said, we're not going to see this Mercury come forward. We'll see this Mercury conjunct Venus next week, right? We'll see that happen next, Tuesday morning, if you will. Monday going into Tuesday, we'll see that happen. By this time, Mars will be at 15 degrees of Sagittarius. And we're not going to see Mercury station direct until, right around here. I think it's going to be like, Saturday going into Sunday? Which is... Saturday afternoon, 1:30 p.m. We'll see that Mercury is finally going to actually be stationing direct. Ironically, of course, that moon is going to be with Saturn and Neptune. So that's the thing about this. Over this next week and a half or so, the moon is right now over in Scorpio. So it's with It's understanding things from the sun's point of view, Venus's point of view, Mercury's point of view. By the time that Mercury moves forward and the moon's going to be with Saturn and Neptune, then, and of course, Saturn is also going to be stationing too. So that's the other thing, that moon is actually going to conjunct Saturn, right? Because Saturn's going to station. When is it stationing? It's around the same time, I guess. It's stationing, I guess, before Mercury does. Hold on, I'm doing hours instead of days. Oh yeah, that's right. It stations like pretty much right before. So Saturn's going to station right before, and then Mercury's going to station direct as well. We'll see that moon conjunct this Saturn at 25 degrees. Mercury is getting ready to station, and bam, pretty much right during this conjunction that Mercury is going to station, Venus will be at 28 degrees of Scorpio, and it will, of course, be making the trine over to Neptune as well, as it's opposing this Uranus. So we're going to definitely see this kind of energy build up over this next week and a half or so, and it's going to be a little bit intense. While this moon is going to go through Sagittarius, so there may be a little. It's going to inject hopefully some hope, and some vision for the future. But then it's going to go into Capricorn. At least it's not going to be making a ton of like crazy aspects. There's nothing with it in Capricorn, so we can get like that kind of pure energy. It'll go through Aquarius, and then it'll hit this Pisces energy. Of course, all of this leading up to the eventual full moon that we'll have in Gemini, right? So this is going to be one of those. This is going to be like the 10 days where we kind of have to like hunker down a little bit. We'll have that Thanksgiving kind of like right in the middle of that, but definitely over this next week we're gonna have to kind of hunker down, and we may take a couple of hits. It's not gonna necessarily be the easiest, but at the same time, I think once this moon comes into Pisces, it's gonna be with Saturn, it'll be with Neptune. I think we'll be able to look back on this new moon and be like, okay, I can see why I went through that. I can see why it was important to upgrade this arsenal, upgrade the tools, upgrade my moves. And yes, it's going to be hard. This can be a nice little victory point, especially once that moon gets into Aries, right? Which is going to be Saturday night. This can be a nice little victory moment. It's like almost like, okay, I'm here. I made it to this point. Now let's keep going forward, right? So I know like in my personal life, a lot of it's having to do with school. Like I think my final assignments are due on the 7th, so I really only have like 3 weeks left. And it's like at the beginning of the semester, it was cool. I was getting through stuff, and I'm honestly like I kind of hit a wall like a couple weeks ago. I'm not even gonna lie, but we're gonna just make it through. And yes, it gets a little bit tougher as you keep going, but you also have got a little bit tougher. So you're far more capable than you realize. So, I want to read, let's see. Where can I go to? I want to read the Sabian symbol. Can I do that? Oh, it's not going to do what I want it to do. Hold on. Oh, maybe I just do it this way. Google Chrome. Ah, there we go. Yeah, the Sabian symbol. I wanted to read the Sabian symbol for this new moon. Scorpio 28. It'll end up making it 29. So let's do this. Okay, so, and I'll just kind of move it like that. An Indian woman pleading to the chief for the lives of her children. This symbol implies the need or the ability to be an advocate for the rights of others, particularly youngsters or children, and being prepared to engage with others in order to bring about a desired result. You may find yourself standing up for those in your care or for those who need your care, whether it's your children, your ideals, or creative pursuits. Even if they sometimes deserve rejection, punishment, or judgment, the solution will possibly be found not in being defensive, as in simply asking for consideration, mercy, and leniency. This can also bring a healing to others, whether it's through their own actions or through finding the healers that are needed to effect a cure. Patterns of family dominance, pleading one's cause, family law courts, lawyers, courts, custody battles, advocates having firm ideas, guilt, innocence, intervention, intercession, being prepared to be dominated, making a sacrifice of oneself to achieve peace and quiet, ramming one's opinions, being expelled, being made an example of. It's kind of interesting, but since Scorpio does rule shared resources, that doesn't necessarily surprise me. We may see some stuff, I think, maybe more politically along these lines with this Sabian symbol. And maybe in your personal life, you might experience some things like this. But yeah, I think there's still a level of standing up for our ideals in our creative pursuits. I think we have to kind of, I don't know if we can, like I said, we don't want to just necessarily ram our own opinions through. I think this is about, yeah, it's okay to have firm ideas and stuff like that, but we don't want to be so firm to where we shut out people. But I do think that this is an interesting symbol considering, like I said, Scorpio does rule shared resources, and there's a lot of things when it comes to, you know, um, Scorpio placements. A lot of times they'll find themselves in the justice system somewhere, whether they're like police officers, whether they are involved in the courts, like attorneys and different things like that. That's very Scorpio energy. Investigations. That's very Scorpio energy, right? So we may see something maybe more like among celebrities that has to deal with a lot of this stuff. I wouldn't be surprised as far as that goes. It's something that kind of just becomes much more publicized, if you will. So definitely kind of interesting. But I think this is about you know, there's a lot of healing that can happen with this new moon. I think that ultimately is the message. But I like reading the Sabian symbols and stuff too. So, anyways, let's draw a card, and then we'll be donezo for this new moon in Scorpio. So let's see what we got. If you guys can hear stuff in the background, I am washing clothes, so yeah. I don't have like a separate room that I can do that my desk is set up in, so. But you just gotta do what you gotta do, so. Let me give this a pretty good shuffle. Alright, what do we got for the new moon in Scorpio? Interesting when we're talking about this Sabian symbol. I got the Justice card in reverse. I think this is really talking about just the unbalanced nature of life sometimes. That we may be seeking justice and we may not necessarily get it in the way that we want. Maybe we don't even get the monetary amount that we want. We may not get the outcome that we want. So there is an inherent injustice that happens, and we have to be willing to fight for that justice. But we also want to make sure that we're not just playing out someone else's idea of justice, and maybe we resonate with it to a certain degree, but we have to ask ourselves, is this really what we want, or am I just playing into someone else's hands? And they may say something that sounds good, but what if it's actually not good for me too? I think that's the thing. There's a level of discernment that we have to have with this new moon, if you will. I want to get another card as well. So I have the Lovers in reverse too. So I feel like this might be speaking to some type of like public thing with like a celebrity where there's some injustices that happen between two lovers or something like that, and it becomes like, but I feel like this might be the distraction, to be fair, but it's gonna be something interesting that could, I said, this could potentially happen. It may not happen, but I'm saying like this I feel like is more so the distraction for the deeper transformation that's going to be happening. So, but kind of interesting getting those two cards there. I'll get one more card as well. So, yeah, I had the King of Cups in reverse. Yeah, so like I said, this is the King of Cups in reverse. I don't know. I get this image in my head of a crying king, and he's crying because of the injustices. Maybe that he has caused, or maybe turning a blind eye, or not being aware or cognizant of the trials and tribulations of the people that he serves as king. He is the king, and people serve him, but he also serves the people. So this King of Cups can definitely be in their feels. This is someone who is ruling from a place of emotion, especially with it being in reverse. So this is about how can we find some emotional wisdom during this time. You know what I'm saying? So it's like we have to learn how to forgive ourselves. We have to learn how to have grace and how to have compassion. The King of Cups in reverse has troubles with compassion and grace. They allow their emotions to get the better of them, and they rule and make decisions from these places that not only hurt themselves, but it hurts all the other people around them. Now, they may be sort of insulated from the hurt that it does to themselves because it's everyone else around them that's feeling more of the immediate repercussions of those actions. But ultimately, it hurts them as well. So I think we have to take that into consideration. The way that we make decisions right now, if we're making it from a place of just pure emotion, and it's going to be tough, like I said, Mercury's retrograde, so we're not really thinking things through right now. But if we're making decisions from a place of pure emotion, we have to realize that those decisions are ultimately hurting us. Even if we may be insulated by all these things around us, ultimately it will fall back on your shoulders. So this is about, like I said, emotional integrity, emotional wisdom, and this is a big transformation. So we're all taking some hits right now. We're all taking some punches to the face and stuff like that. But we got this, and resilient. It's about how can we be a little bit more even emotionally resilient, not shoving down our emotions and not feeling our emotions, not turning a blind eye to our emotions, but not allowing them to manifest into something that, like I said, there's a dragon on this card, right? We don't want it to manifest into the dragon that devours the entire town. We can actually have this dragon manifest into the one that is benevolent and bestows fortune to the town, if you will. If you catch my metaphor. Anyways, that's going to do it for this new moon in Scorpio video. Definitely an interesting one with these cards too and stuff and the Sabian symbol. So be interesting to see how this all plays out. But anyways, y'all take care, stay blessed, have a wonderful day. I will see you all when the moon goes into Sag. Later.